McLaren GTS, an update of the previous GT, is a crucial model for the Woking maker. Like its predecessor, it's far more of a McLaren than a Grand Tourer. If you want one, you'll be fine with that. The GTS is a McLaren that you might more easily be able to justify. Here, we'll take a closer look. Back in 2019, McLaren launched an entry-level model that should have been a strong seller for the supercar brand, the GT. It wasn't, despite a useful update in 2022, and you get the impression that the Woking maker is still trying to understand why. In early 2024, they announced that the GT would be replaced by this GTS model, which isn't really a new car, but more a far-reaching update of the GT. This is the closest McLaren currently gets to being a grand touring sports car, like a Bentley Continental GT, an Aston Martin DB12 or a Ferrari Roma. Unlike its GT predecessor, the GTS needs to stand out in a McLaren lineup that tends to be dominated by more headline-making models like the V6 hybrid Artura. Can it? You can find out more about this kind of model by downloading the Car and Driving app. And if your interest is specifically in this GTS, you'll need to stay with us for the industry's most comprehensive road test, the Car and Driving Review. The twin-turbo 4-litre V8 of the GT has been massaged a little for this GTS with an extra 15 brake horsepower now liberated, boosting total output to 626 bhp. But it won't feel any faster because the 630 Nm torque figure is the same. Arguably more significant is the 10 kg reduction in weight, which allows McLaren to boast a best-in-class power-to-weight ratio of 412 brake horsepower per tonne. To give you some perspective on that, a Porsche 911 Turbo S manages 396 brake horsepower per tonne, while a Bentley Continental GT Speed delivers just 314 brake horsepower per tonne. For the record, this GTS has a fractionally faster benchmark acceleration time than its GT predecessor, 62 miles an hour reached in 3.2 seconds, 0.1 seconds faster, en route to 203 miles an hour. As before, there's an SSG 7-speed dual-clutch paddle-shift gearbox, and over 95% of the V8's power is available from 3,000 RPM, so mid-range acceleration is frantically quick. As you might expect, if you're familiar with cars of this kind, much about the engine note and drive dynamics will be dictated by your choice of driving mode, which means that before setting off in this car, you'll need to get yourself familiar with the workings of this active dynamics panel down here in the lower part of the center console. Press this active button and you'll be able to access the settings of these two rotary controllers, one designated H for handling, the other branded P for powertrain. Each has 3 modes: C for comfort, S for sport, and T for track. Sport mode adopts the brand's momentary ignition spark cut technology, originally engineered for F1 racing, which improves gearshift times and provides a more engaging mechanical feel. Track mode goes a stage further, maximising gear shift performance with McLaren's innovative inertia push system, a technology that harnesses the built-up kinetic energy of the flywheel to deliver a torque impulse as the next gear is engaged, ensuring absolutely no let-up in acceleration during upshifts. As well as varying the exhaust note, these various settings affect stability control thresholds, ride quality, and gear change timings for that paddle shift auto transmission we mentioned, which you'll want to control via these big aluminium shifters behind the chunky wheel. In its softest comfort setting, this GTS really is quite impressively supple, riding the bumps better than some fast family hatchbacks we've driven, which is one of the things that makes this car a much better prospect for long distances than some of its rivals. There's a little more refinement than with this Woking maker's other models too, thanks to various cabin insulation measures and noise cancelling tyres. But again, predictably, the improvement isn't really enough to make the car feel anywhere near Bentley-like in highway cruising. Through the turns, where you'll appreciate the traction of the grippy, bespoke Pirelli tyres, you'll notice the fact that this McLaren is lighter and more agile than most competitors at this price point. That's aided by the proactive damping control suspension system, which features sensors that proactively prime the dampers for tarmac irregularities. As usual with the McLaren, steering feel is a highlight, courtesy of an electro-hydraulic system tuned to a single software map across the various drive modes. Response, weight and feedback are clinically sharp when the car is being driven enthusiastically, while increased assistance at lower speeds helps with urban driving and manoeuvring. Body control is slightly softer than in other McLaren sports cars, but not by enough to make this a grand tourer in the proper sense of the word. There's a little more refinement than with this Woking maker's other models too, but again, predictably, the improvement isn't really enough to make the car feel Aston-like in highway cruising. Mind you, the sound it makes is difficult to tire of. For town driving, ride height has been raised to the point where this McLaren can coast over speed humps as easily as any ordinary sports coupe or hot hatch. Stopping performance is phenomenal, and you'll be pleasantly surprised to find that carbon ceramic brakes are fitted as standard. Featuring 390mm discs at the front and 380mm discs at the rear, paired with lightweight 6-piston aluminium calipers plus a 4-piston setup at the rear, the high-performance system provides decent usability and comfort in town, and quite astonishing deceleration from higher speeds. The car stops from 124 miles an hour in just 127 metres, and more relevantly, from 62 miles an hour in just 32 metres. You'll immediately recognise this as a McLaren, of course, but unless you're a brand loyalist, you might initially struggle to identify which one. Given that this GTS is the entry-level model in the range, that can only be a good thing. Like its GT predecessor, it's claimed to be the most aerodynamic series production car the company makes, helped by a teardrop-shaped glass house encircled by a dark collar at the beltline which tapers back into glazed C-pillars. That's where you'll find a mesh-covered flank intake on each side, plus an intricate cooling channel for the engine on each side on top of the rear haunches. At almost 4.7 metres with extended front and rear overhangs, the GTS is longer than is traditional for a McLaren supercar. It's still the longest car the company makes. GTS branding features on the lower part of each front door, and this solid composite roof can be replaced, as here, with a panoramic glass top with optional electrochromatic glass. As with the GT, the big wheels are 20 inches at the front and 21 inches at the rear, both rims clad with grippy Pirelli P0 rubber. The visual changes distinguishing this GTS over the GT are mainly to be found here at the front, below the hammerhead style nose, where there are now sculpted air intakes on the front valance below the headlights. Wide intakes either side are intricately framed, in this case by flicks in shiny gloss black. At the back, there are more GTS updates, taller air scoops over the rear wheel arches and a new rear diffuser for the two enormous round exhausts. Time to take a look in the cabin. This is supposed to be a more day-to-day accessible kind of McLaren, but it's no easier to get into than any of the brand's other models. The Marque's usual dihedral doors are retained, giving an exotic feel. And you step in across the wide sills of McLaren's usual carbon fibre monocell 2T carbon chassis. The carpeting on those sills is going to need to be constantly cleaned during winter months, but at least the door isn't too heavy to pull down behind you. So get comfortable and look around. What's different over the old GT? Well, apart from a few different trim and material combinations, not much, which is surprising because it means that this cabin now feels a generation behind other McLaren models, with an old-style 7-inch portrait format infotainment screen and the brand's usual powertrain and handling controls remaining between the seats, rather than being moved to a more convenient place on top of the instrument binnacle. Still, the 10-inch digital instrument cluster screen remains clear and concise, and as before, these lovely aluminium paddle shifters operate on a rocker, just push down or pull up, just like an F1 car. Some of the trimming could have done with a bit of an update too. The smudge-worthy shiny black trimming used around the screen and the lower centre console, and the disappointingly cheap looking silver plastic that features on the steering wheel, and unless you pay extra for this aluminium finish, around the air vents. All of it feels a bit out of place on a near £200,000 junior supercar. But as with the old GT, there's also lots to compensate. Drilled aluminium pedals, the Alcantara-clad ceiling and A-pillars, and if you specified it, this electrochromatic panoramic roof. Finishing touches come with the most prominent of the 12 Bowers & Wilkins premium audio system speakers, which bulge on the A-pillars, offer a wave effect in the centre of the top of the dash, and have beautifully milled metal covers on the doors. Plus, as you grasp the tactile steering wheel and settle into the wonderfully supportive race-style seats, it's lovely to be reminded what real leather looks, smells and feels like. Overall, you'd still find a Bentley Continental GT or an Aston Martin DB12 more luxurious, but this GTS has a cosier and more intimate feel, which makes up for a lot. As usual with this maker's sports cars, there are only 2 seats, in a class where quite a few rivals are 2+2s, with tiny but useful rear pews. Those front seats are power operated, well padded and, as I said, trimmed in soft grain aniline leather. But their adjustment controls are awkward to reach, counterintuitively on the left rather than on the right for the driver, and there's no cushion inclination adjustment, which won't please taller folk. All-round visibility is obviously not Porsche 911-like, but it's surprisingly good for something this exotic looking and low slung. I mentioned the instrument display, a 10-inch TFT screen positioned directly ahead of the driver, which provides key vehicle information at a glance, dominated by a central circular rev counter within which there are gear ratio and speed readouts. To the right of this dial can sit info that varies with your choice of handling or powertrain mode, covering either fuel, tyre pressures or temperatures. To the left of the central gauge is an area for selectable displays controlled by this lower left-hand steering wheel stalk, vehicle info, trip data, phone settings and navigation. Along the TFT screen's bottom edge are your chosen handling and powertrain drive mode settings, plus ambient temperature and time. As for the central infotainment screen, well, back in 2022 when we last tested the GT, it felt really out of date without Apple CarPlay or Android Auto smartphone mirroring, so that lack is even more glaring here. At least there are physical climate buttons, and the 10-core super processor setup includes media streaming, basic voice control and satellite navigation with HERE mapping and real-time traffic information. Storage space around the cabin is extremely limited, though you do get useful little cubbies in the dihedral doors. You get no fewer than 3 rather small cup holders, one between the seats and 2 more at the base of the centre stack. The glove box is a reasonable size though, and you can reach back into the luggage area behind for jackets and light bags. There's also a lidded box between the seats within which there's a USB-A port, and a netted pouch in the passenger footwell. Out back, the power-operated rear tailgate reveals 420 litres of luggage space, which is pretty impressive for a McLaren and will swallow a set of golf clubs, but for a weekend away you'll still have to pack quite light. Leather cross straps are provided to tie things down with netting further up. The big aesthetic drawback in having this extra luggage space is that you don't get to see the engine, which has been lowered to maximise cargo capacity but beats not far below the surface. At least items you store here shouldn't get lightly fricasseed by the engine as you drive. Cooling air is fed between the load space and the engine compartment to avoid that, and several layers of foam isolate the engine still further. McLaren reckons you could even carry chocolate without it melting. We wouldn't want to put that to the test. These smart, solid aluminium casted oil and water caps, well, they cost extra. We haven't quite finished either, because there's also a further storage space in the nose. McLaren has thoughtfully provided an extra access button for it on the leading edge of the dihedral driver's door as you raise it. Raise the bonnet, and the front space revealed is actually larger than the tapered nose leads you to expect, though it's rated at just 150 litres in size. The brand claims that 2 small overnight bags would fit there. A netted storage pouch is provided, as is a light and a 12-volt socket. This area boosts this car's total luggage capacity up to 570 litres, which on the face of things vastly improves on what you'd get from class rivals, though to be fair, many of those offer a lot of extra room on the small rear seats this McLaren doesn't have. The McLaren GTS might not cost quite as much as you expect. Think around £180,000 as we filmed in summer 2025, which is about £20,000 less than the Artura PHEV, and positions this model somewhere between an Aston Martin Vantage and a DB12 in terms of price. Likely customers will need to find slightly more than would be necessary for, say, a Porsche 911 Turbo S or a Mercedes-AMG GT63. This entry-level McLaren model has always sold slower than the brand's more expensive cars, despite the fact that the Woking maker loaded later versions of the old GT up with an impressive amount of extra standard equipment. McLaren's added even more kit to this GTS. So intelligent adaptive suspension, carbon ceramic brakes and a roof panel in recycled carbon fibre all come as standard, while various exterior components are now finished in gloss black. The brand also includes keyless entry, a 10-inch digital instrument cluster, dual zone air conditioning, cruise control, an Alcantara headliner and an alarm. There are 3 interior trimming packages. Standard, the more brightly finished performance theme, or this test car's more modern orientated Tech Lux pack. 2 further key equipment packs bundle together key features and come without extra cost. The premium pack includes full LED headlights, a 1200 watt Bowers & Wilkins 12 speaker sound system, a power opening tailgate and cabin air purification. The practicality pack includes a rear view camera, all-round parking sensors and power folding mirrors. As usual in this class, there's lots more scope to spend lots more. New personalisation options include new lava grey paint and updated colour selections, along with a unique to GTS turbine forged alloy wheel. There's also an updated choice of interior upholsteries, including soft grain aniline leather seats with a double piping pattern and new contrast stitching. Other options include a volumetric alarm upgrade, a vehicle tracking system and a car cover. The roof can be gloss black painted or supplied in panoramic glass, and to that latter option can be added this test car's £5,200 electrochromatic panoramic roof option. Other extras on this test car include rear privacy glass and a milled from solid aluminium pack which fashions the air vent bezels and oil and water caps from that material. Plus, this test car has these special gloss black 10 twin spoke forged alloy wheels with polished calipers and a fearsomely expensive £7,500 Helios orange paint finish. Before going too far with extra cost fripperies like these though, make sure that you've left enough in your budget to be able to add another £2,200 to the asking price for this test car's vehicle lift system, which on the used market is one of the first things a buyer will ask about and is there to take the fear factor out of sharp ramps and pronounced speed humps. This setup has been significantly improved over the one that was fitted to the GT, and it raises the front end of the car by 20 millimeters to provide a ground clearance of 130 millimeters. It's able to raise the nose of the car in less than half the time of the old GT's setup. It's probably fair to say that residual values for the old GT were a bit softer than McLaren had hoped for, with some customers cycling through their ownership periods quite rapidly, some grumbling about things like the car's infotainment system and lack of oral fireworks. Those issues were fixed by the end of GT production, and oversupply isn't going to be too much of an issue. There's no change over the old GT model's efficiency figures. For reference, these see a combined cycle fuel economy figure of 23.7 miles to the gallon and emissions rated at 270 grams per kilometre of CO2. Likely owners certainly won't care a fig about any of this, but even they might notice the substantial 37% benefit in kind tax rating that this GTS incurs. That'll mean hefty annual tax bills. Group 50 insurance means that buyers will be keeping their brokers in Beaujolais too. Of course, many owners will acquire this McLaren as just one of a stable of models and will have negotiated their own multi-car deal with their insurer. Continuing with the bad news, you don't get the 7-year free servicing package that Ferrari offers, so you'll have to pick up the tab yourself for routine maintenance, which will be required every 12,400 miles or 12 months, depending on which comes around sooner. Every second year, the car will need a full oil change too. With expensive consumables and high labour rates, you'll certainly need to know what you're letting yourself in for. What else? Well, the paint surface is warranted for 3 years, visible cosmetic corrosion for 5 years, and perforation corrosion of the vehicle body is covered for 10 years. If you've been waiting for a McLaren practical enough not to be merely a high days and holidays indulgence, then this isn't it. You'll need either the brand's rumoured forthcoming SUV or the future rumoured 2+2 model for that. But the GTS is a useful update over the GT and certainly has its place in the range, bringing the 4-litre twin-turbo V8 power plant from the 750S in at a slightly more accessible price point. In terms of rivals, don't think Bentley Continental GT or Aston Martin DB12. We'd say an Aston Martin Vantage or a Mercedes-AMG GT is closer to what you get here. And for not much more than the cost of either of those two cars, this McLaren feels a good deal more exotic. The GTS update package hasn't altered this design's proposition much. It's still not a true Grand Tourer, but it is a true McLaren. And that's what really matters.